I'm going to let you host.
Oh, I'm going to ask questions. That's the thing with my thing is I ask the questions and then you answer, and then that's how hopefully
you're
it goes.
hosting. You're the host for this one. You'd be a good little guest.
Are you ready? I'm not.
I've been ready.
All right.
I arrived ready, darling.
Hello and welcome to the Fun Shoot podcast, where I talk to image makers and light shapers about their artistry and their process of creativity. This episode, we do have a treat. She is an international award-winning burlesque producer and performer. She is also probably one of my best worst friends
Aw.
ever. I'd like to welcome Miss Lucy Buttons. Yay!
Hi.
Hello. We're finally doing this.
I feel embarrassed having you introduce me like that. Are you embarrassed saying that?
I am shaking in my trousers.
No,
I don't
you're
know.
not. We do this all the time.
Yeah, but not me in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I know.
I just ride.
Not that I judge at all.
I barely pay attention in the other podcasts. But now you're on mine. But it is a treat because I know we've known each other for a very long time. We've had a shit ton of weird experiences, but I don't think I don't know with you, but with some of my friends here, there's very little time to actually have one-on-one straight up conversations about persons, especially in New York where everybody's busy. You're most of the time talking about something else or talking shit about something else.
Okay.
So this is a time where I actually get to dive a little deeper on your origin story. So first of all, for the uninitiated...
Well, there's an egg and some sperm.
Oof. Oof. That is scientific.
Origin story.
Yeah. Womp, womp, womp. No. But for the uninitiated...
Oh, there's no horns in this podcast?
100%. It's my podcast.
So there you go. Womp, womp, womp.
That's the sad trombone. You're
Yeah.
going to get the rap horn shortly when it deserves so. But
Okay.
For
Is there gang gang?
I haven't done gang gang in this podcast, but now that you've mentioned it,
Lucky listeners.
lucky listeners, for the 6 people that listens to this podcast and might not be as familiar with Lucy Buttons as I am, tell the people who you are and what you do.
I'm Lucy Buttons. And I'm a burlesque performer and MC. I've been doing it for almost 14 years
Wow.
now. I decided to admit that recently.
So you've been doing it since you were 12.
Yep, exactly. So I've been doing it a long time. I make my own costumes. I produce shows all around the city, all around the country. I guess I've done that too. So yeah, I dance. That's it.
That's it.
Simple.
What is the Lucy Buttons aesthetic?
I really am about escapism.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that's not an aesthetic, but that's a feeling that I want people to have when they're at my shows that I produce or while specifically I'm on stage. Hopefully to another era, but at least to a more fun time, more lighthearted. I'm definitely not trying to do moody pieces that are like emotional, and that doesn't mean that they don't have feelings, but I just want people to feel joy and experience glamour and the more beautiful things in life more so than some other artists that I know, which are great, and I enjoy watching those things, but it's just what I want to give to my audience is more of a joyous lightheartedness. And I think others would describe my style as being pretty glamorous.
I was going to say mean, but glamorous sounds...
You asked for an aesthetic, not
Jokes.
so yeah, pretty glamorous, pretty sparkly.
Where did the queen of rock and roll burlesque come from?
The tagline?
Yeah.
Or me. So when I first started doing burlesque, it was at Arlene's Grocery. Lower East Side. And I had been working at, so there's like the Slip Room, Arlene's Grocery, Rosario's, and the Skinny, right? Makes a little square there. And I was bartending at the Skinny, which my friends owned at the time. And I was familiar with the Slip Room and had friends that worked there. and they were going to do a show, not the burlesque people, some friends, were going to do a show at Arlene's Grocery, and they wanted to have these like rock bands and have burlesque and belly dance in between. And I have a background in belly dance, and I had been wanting to get into burlesque but didn't know how, so I volunteered myself. They were just chatting at the bar, and they booked me, and I kept doing it. It was a monthly show for maybe 4 months, and I did a couple new numbers for each show. And after one of them, one of the guys messaged on MySpace and said,
wow, you're really dating this one.
I know. And so, but if you go back 14 years, you know that was
thought you were
MySpace
12.
days, so it's
Right.
fine. And he said, you really are the queen of rock and roll burlesque. And it just sort of stuck and went from there.
So the shows had a live band and you were dancing
To rock
thereabouts.
music.
That's dope.
Yep.
So that's, I
And
mean,
at a rock venue, you know.
and we've talked about this probably a gajillion times. Maybe I never paid attention, but I didn't even know that is your origin story. I always thought that you had formal training of dancing of some sort.
I do.
All right, and then let's go there. So
I mean, informal, formal. But so I was a dancer before, and I discovered burlesque and wanted to do it, didn't know how. And then the rock and roll thing came in because I was using rock music. So I was doing a hybrid where I was doing classic, really glamorous things to the rock music, which at the time other people weren't. Now it's very common.
yeah, well,
So-
again, 14 years ago.
Fuck off.
So you mentioned that you were just interested in burlesque. What spurred that interest for that particular genre of dance? There's plenty of other dance that I know that you do. Why burlesque?
So the thing that I like about those are two different questions. Which one would you like me to answer first?
Let's start with what spurred your interest in burlesque.
So I had a friend that had become a burlesque performer, Scooter Pie,
Yeah.
who you've met. And I had another friend and I saw her at the slip room, and I had another friend who was the bouncer at the old Galapagos, which used to be in
Dumbo.
Williamsburg. No.
Oh,
That was the second or third
venue.
one.
Oh, wow.
Old Galapagos was at this art space in Williamsburg, and then it became an American Apparel, and then it closed. I don't know what it is now. And I think it used to be a factory before it was Galapagos. But this was sort of still when Williamsburg was cool. And
Wow.
he was a bouncer there, and the world famous Bob had a show every Monday, and so he convinced me to go there and check it out. And then they did a little show on Bravo when they were opening 40 Deuce in Vegas. And that was very different than what I saw in New York, because what was happening in New York was more sort of performance art. It was not at all glamorous, like at all. Bob maybe was, but none of the other people I saw were. Sorry, guys. But the show, they had great costumes, and they were trained dancers, so they were doing more interesting things. The other ones were a bit more storytelling or, whatever. So that really was like, okay, well, then I can use my dance training. I can wear glamorous costumes. Who wouldn't love that? And do my own thing. I can have my own choreography. I can choose my own music. I can wear the costumes I feel comfortable with. And the other difference was on that show, they wore the traditional net bras with the pasties on them. So you weren't actually getting topless, because I'm actually quite shy.
Wow.
And so that was like, okay, well, I'll wear those, and then I won't be so naked.
Yeah. Well, that's you mentioned something that people might be surprised in learning, that Lucy Buttons is somewhat there's a conservative angle.
I grew up in Wisconsin.
Right. Perfect segue. You grew up in Wisconsin. That, at least, I knew. Madison, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you are mistaken. Appleton, Wisconsin. It's okay. It's all this. Once you get there, it's all the same. It's like
cheese.
the 60s. I mean, it's totally different.
How did the Lucy Buttons there, or how did that person before the Lucy Buttons move from Appleton, Wisconsin to New York?
I took a plane, and I had a few boxes shipped and some suitcases.
Yeah. Why? Asshole.
Yeah.
No, but what was the impetus for you to move to? Has New York always been the destination that you wanted to be in?
In high school, I was dancing a lot. It was my focus, and I wanted to be a star. And so I was going to go to New York or LA or maybe Vegas. And I'd never been to New York or LA. I knew in New York I could sell my car and use the subway, and then I'd have a little bit more of a financial cushion.
Good for you.
And there was earthquakes in LA. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll try New York. It was really that simple, because when you're 18, that's how things are. So I graduated high school, and 2 weeks later, I moved to New York City by myself.
Wow. See, that's something that we never even talked about. That, straight out of high school, went to New York. Was that fun? Great experience, I'm assuming, huh?
So my mother came with me to check it out before I moved. Like, I didn't just get on a plane and move here having no plans. So I came here and I met a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend who was renting a room in Washington Heights, which I rented. I think it was $500 and something at the time. It was a 3-bedroom apartment. And then she and I were staying at, I want to say it's called maybe the Leo House. It's on 23rd Street. I couldn't tell you what it is. It's sort of like a hostel. There was a shared bathroom. We had twin beds in our room. It was shitty. My mother is so frugal to a fault. Like, she could have afforded a hotel room, but she wouldn't spring for it. And I swear to God, there was like a nun at the front desk. It was the weirdest place I'd ever experienced. So we stayed there for a week or two while I met these people and tried to get a job. And I didn't know how to get a job, but I'd been waiting tables for a long time. So I applied at like cheesy fucking restaurants because they were less intimidating to me, because that's what we had in Wisconsin for the most part. And I got a job at the Hula Hands in the Empire State Building.
Dope.
That used to be there on the corner of 34th and 5th. And it was downstairs, and I waited tables there. That's how I met Scooter Pie. She was the person that trained me on like my first day.
So we have to blame Scooter for everything that is
pretty much
you right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty much. And then I was going out drinking with my coworkers there, and I met other people that way. And then I found an apartment for myself. I stayed in that place maybe 3 months. And the last month, by the way, someone else moved in to share my room who was in her 30s, like mid 30s. And it was fucking horrible. Like, I don't know how you have 18-year-olds and a 30-year-old living together, but it was just, it was crazy. So I moved out and moved to Woodside, Queens. And then my boyfriend at the time came to join me, because I then found us a house to live in.
That's nice.
So
at least a little bit of a...
And he brought the rest of the stuff.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's kind of like the normal, traditional middle America person coming into the city, big dreams. 14 years later, how is it?
14.
I'm going to harp on 14 years later.
How is it? It's stressful. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
It's amazing because anything can happen here on any given night. And that's my favorite thing about it. Like, you can just go out with, under normal circumstances, with no plans, and bump into someone you haven't seen in ages, or meet someone and just have the best fucking time. Yeah. But most of the time living here is not like that. It's not like the movies, and it's not exciting. It's just fucking really hard work.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the main thrusts of this podcast, is to really dive into the actual process of maintaining one's artistry or passion or creativity. Like, I would assume that you love burlesque.
Totally.
Right. It is your passion. It is your thing.
It's the thing I've been most committed to.
Beyond anything else, it's burlesque has been your real partner for the
I've lost several partners because of it. Yeah.
But for the better part of 14 years, that has been your thing.
Yeah.
What would you tell people? What would be your advice for people to maintain their passions in such an adverse society to date?
Oh, I didn't think that was going to be what you asked. Good job. Good question.
Right.
Okay, so I am a perfectionist to a fault. Like, it ruins my life. But part of that is that I'm extraordinarily hardworking. I never stop working. And if you want to be happy, that's not the way to do it. But if you want to be successful and be able to have nice things and be an artist, that's the only way to do it. So I just every moment I'm not working at a muggle job, I'm working on my art in one way or another. When I have breaks there or I'm on the train, I'm checking and responding to emails and social media stuff. I'm trying to create content all the time, which I'm definitely not the best at, but I try to do enough to stir the pot, which is super important these days as an artist in any format. And constantly challenging myself, reworking acts I've been doing the whole time, networking, and doing other forms of self-improvement because that really informs your art as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned it, like muggle job, something that most people actually.
Sorry, should I have not used that term?
No,
Is it
it's perfect
confusing?
because that's a better segue too. Most people look at and admire. There's some admiration when people look at artists because they're so committed to their passion that they identify as such. Yeah, I'm a singer, I'm a model, I'm an actress, I'm whatever.
Sure.
But very few people actually, if they look at the hours in the week,
Right.
if you're a performer, you're only performing like maybe 3-4 hours a week, but the
You're
rest
maybe only on stage 3 or 4 hours a week, but there's a lot of
100%.
A lot of people call it admin. I really don't
Yeah.
call it that in life. I'm not like, I'm going to do admin today.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm going to relax on the couch, which
Yeah.
really means working on
Right.
my computer for the entire Saturday.
But some people, it's like, yeah, you're working on something else, so you're administrating
Yeah,
management of
sure.
other things. But in terms
Your
of
assistant Sally.
said, muggle job, like, tell us the day job, tell us the night job.
I don't talk about my day job a lot. I work in luxury hair salons, and I am a color specialist.
Yeah. So that's
People
the thing.
pay me a shitload of money to paint their hair.
Perfect. I mean, and that's something that not a lot of, I think, from me, when I listen to my favorite podcast, they harp a lot on the passion or the success stories, but they don't realize that there's 2, 3, 4, 5 other things that needs to funnel into the person itself still doing their passions. So what are the sort of things that you have to manage and sacrifice or work hard at in order for you to unlock more time to perform and network and do all the things that you were mentioning just a second ago?
Well, so I've been both. I was a full-time performer for not quite a year. And I ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and lived in a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 much older men who were like alcoholics. It was not a great situation. And it was nice, but it was a constant struggle to be hustling. And there's lots of burlesque performers and artists that do that, and it brings them joy in many ways. And there are times I have to go through that as well. And even having a day job, which I worked really hard at. When I started doing burlesque, my day job was bartending. So I still had something else then. And then I went to school and I had to work 2 jobs and go to school. So I wasn't doing a ton of burlesque then. And so that was part of what I did in order to make that happen. And then I started apprenticing and working and all of those things. And having that day job allows me to funnel more money into my burlesque because the money I make from it, I can use for new costumes instead of having to scramble to make something that really isn't as beautiful as I want it to be. So it really helps me to be better. It helps me to be able to travel to other places, to meet people and be exposed to other things by having that muggle job. So I don't view it at all. Like some people think that it's a disappointment if you have it. I think it really benefits me a lot. And I don't meet a lot of people that help my burlesque career, but I also don't meld those worlds very much. So maybe I would if I talked about it more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you mentioned it yourself. A lot of people feel that they kind of minimize their day job because they identify as their other persona or their art form or their passion, but they shouldn't, because it actually funds it alleviates the stress of having to do certain gigs or artistic endeavors that they might not be able to say no to.
100%.
Right? Yeah. So in that case, what's the burlesque dream, or what's the dream What's the performer dream?
My dreams died a long time ago. They really did. I wanted, honestly, I moved to New York. I wanted to tour with a pop artist or whatever.
Okay.
And be like a video hoe. That was honestly my dream.
All right.
Because I grew up with like the background dancer situation. That's what I loved. But there are still people that do that. But I moved to New York instead of LA. I should have gone to LA. If I wasn't a naive girl from Wisconsin, I would have known better. Or I could have gone to college for dance and gotten picked up. But I didn't know. And honestly, I got distracted in New York trying to make enough money to live. And I always felt like I didn't have enough extra money to do other things. And it's hard to balance working and going to class and then going to auditions, and you have to have headshots and I also had horrific acne, which held me back from doing a lot of things for a long time. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about your dreams dying.
Oh, yeah. So my dreams died with that. I mean, I got older and then I injured my arm. I had to have surgery. So that took years out of my life where I went back and did something. And, just then I had a car accident. And so that changed my dancing in some ways. So they really did kind of die because that was truly my dream.
To be a video hoe.
To be a background dancer.
For a giant pop star.
And when I moved here, like I thought maybe I would like to act. I don't really like it at all. I've done stuff other people would be really excited about. And I find it really boring. There's a lot of waiting around.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're like basically running in the same circle the whole time. I find it really boring. So then I wanted to be like a big burlesque superstar. Well, I kind of think that's died too. I mean, I've been successful. I work regularly. I have some fans and, I think I make, art that people enjoy, but I don't think that, first of all, I don't think there really is such a thing. You know, there's Dita Von Teese and that's about it.
Oh.
Dirty Martini's extraordinarily successful, but she's not like rolling in it. You know what I mean? She makes her living that way full time. But I know a lot of those people now, and I don't know that their life is necessarily better than mine or more fulfilling. So now my dream is to have a house and to still be able to make art and to have great relationships, like more real life things than artist things.
Yes. And
be happy.
That's actually one of the many messages that we want to spur forward, that, in a time where there is a lot of isms, like there's 10 million activism things, you can be, identify as whatever you want. You can, build stuff. You can talk about things. You can save the environment. It's actually okay to dream about just normal things.
Well, and I think when you're working as an artist for a long time with those struggles, like I swear to God, I have financial PTSD. I'm terrified of having to hustle that hard again. It's not that I don't know I can do it. I 100% know that I can. I really don't fucking want to ever do that again. And I will do almost anything to not be in that position, because it was
of doing multiple jobs
and like going to do a client, going to do a gig, taking those gigs I don't want to do, feeling unsafe in them, doing photo shoots at weirdos' houses, like, or traveling, staying on a weirdo's couch, eating shitty food.
You do know that you're in my apartment. That's kind of like you're describing me.
I'm not describing you. I've never slept on your couch. But, so I just would do anything to avoid that. And also part of becoming an adult is like valuing things differently. Yeah.
Well, but in terms of your art, is there anything else that you would want to accomplish?
100%.
Right. Give me one.
You want a detailed list?
Give me a couple of your, like, either acts or things that you wish to, or you're already working on that you wish to see into fruition.
I have some amazing acts that I'm working on, and I would love to have big props involved in some of them. But I can't give you more detailed information about that because of how those things work. So I am working on some of those, and I usually have like one or two that I'm sort of actively at home crafting and dealing with costumers. And then I have like 10 more that I'm slowly starting to collect materials for or figure out who can make things or stuff like that. So I have all of that stuff happening. I want to get on the fucking stage at Viva Las Vegas, which I was supposed to be at this year, like very soon. And I wasn't going to be on the big stage that I really want to be on, which is also the stage that Burlesque Hall of Fame uses for their weekender. I was going to be doing the Burlesque Bingo, and I've been applying for Viva for years and hadn't gotten in because it used to be an online voting thing, which they finally did away with last year. But then I was selected to actually be a paid performer, which was even better.
Amazing. Congratulations.
And you get your ticket and all sorts of stuff with that. So I was looking forward to it. My partner was going to go with me and was looking forward to it. But I wasn't going to be on that big stage, and I want to be on that big fucking stage. And I can't get into BHOF. I have been performing a really long time, and most of the people that started around the same time have done it. Now there's so many, now that it's moved to Vegas and it's become much more well known because of social media, everyone has it on their list, not just to do it, but to like be Miss Exotic World.
Okay.
And that's an understandable goal, but not everyone can be Miss Exotic World. And I view the Burlesque Hall of Fame in a different way. Like, I would like it to be when someone has had a nice career and been doing things for the community for 10 years before they would even be eligible to be the queen of burlesque, you know? But that's not how it goes. Yeah. So a lot of times people get into best debut like a couple years in, and then they're in the queen competition. But there's like 500 people applying for 10 spots in that best debut. And because I've never done it, I can't break in that.
Okay. Well,
I mean, so I would just really would like to do that someday.
Yeah, those festivals of any art form or any group, it's always great to be recognized because you're being recognized by your peers. People.
And my rejection is fresh while you're asking me.
Oh, yeah. I never aspired to win any photography competitions. I'll join one or two with buddies and friends over the past few years, but I never really thought the technical stuff mattered as much. But what made it special is when friends that know the art form, that respect it, rather than looking at it as a popularity contest or how cool you are,
right?
Or how, because I can't break through the innovation part because it's photography. There's very few things that you can reinvent, and the few people that can do that are geniuses, which is not me. But from time to time, you'll get to touch a person's heart because of the thing that you made. And if other people recognize that, that's the only thing that I think I've been looking for. And luckily, I've done that years before. So now I'm just like looking at naked women. Well,
and I certainly have peers in the burlesque community that have recognized my work. And that means a ton to me. And I have people that, are asking me to mentor them and all of that. But it is sort of that. You want to be recognized by your community, especially on a stage, like not just the stage, but like the world stage, because that's one of the few competitions, if not the only one, where just by performing at it, you have other opportunities and it sort of brings you up a level in people's eyes. However, I feel like, and I don't know the actual selection process, so I don't mean to talk bad about any of those people. God forbid they ever hear I said it. But I think it is a little bit of a popularity contest now. And that's unfortunate because not just myself, there's so many amazing, talented people that maybe do know that historic, like there is a way of making a proper pinup photograph, right? And lighting it properly and styling it properly. And it's not pinup unless you've done those things, right? And same in burlesque. You can do whatever you want with it, but if you're doing an homage to classic burlesque, there are some elements that really need to be there to be an educated, like full experience. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so there's sort of a difference between someone who's like having fun taking off their clothes and someone who's really educated in the physical movement of it, the costuming and things like that.
100%. I totally understand, as a hobbyist photographer who kind of prides himself in actually...
You're not a hobbyist. Come on.
Again...
You sell yourself short. That's the one place you really should not be humble.
I know, but the idea is it's only because I respect true artists and photographers way more. Because
why don't you consider yourself?
Because I do not spend nearly as much time doing photography as I would even want myself. I would be lucky if I spent 4 hours a week doing
That's
anything.
because of what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
That's life. Yeah.
And I consider it, if I can do it 15 hours a week, then I'm a part-timer.
But how much time do you think a musician spends playing their instrument, or
I would assume a lot because they need to practice.
a
I
singer
don't.
sing? They do. That's not true. You do need to practice. I need to practice.
Well, that's the thing, because I don't. That's why I'm still. There was a time where I was
You think writers write all day, every day? Like sometimes you have to spend time in your head, sort of, to be able to do
but
your art.
again, it's like, for me, my personal preference is, give me. It's one thing that you get paid for your thing, because there are plenty of art forms where you don't get paid for decades. So, but you're not less of an artist because nobody paid for your shit.
And there's people that get paid that are shit.
100%, and that's the other side. And I think it's the same for burlesque or
Sure.
Any other art form. Like in photography, is the idea now is, like, if you have a couple of $100 and you have a couple of cute friends that are willing subjects and are popular, has 5,000 Instagram followers, take a photo of them, you're a photographer.
Right.
And conversely, like, for burlesque now, it's like you're a pretty girl that's comfortable with showing some skin and can move a little bit. You can label yourself as a burlesque performer, which is not saying that it's bad, right? But there is a
little bad.
But you need to respect the. You really need to respect the art form.
Yeah.
There are plenty of iPhonographers, like iPhone photographers out there that are amazing. Right?
Oh, that's not what I was gonna.
No, there are a couple out there that are great. There are a couple of videographers that only use very basic cameras and their phone and make amazing films, amazing
Gaga
footage.
just did that video all on an iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the time where our technology is kind of like flattening out. It's kind of democratic. It's more of like how you use it. But the overarching shadow of whoever is Instagram famous is kind of looming. So, no matter how technical or artistically good or honest the thing is, if you only have like a couple of friends that are, pushing you, you're gonna be overshadowed by people that have noisy people that are like retweeting stupid things and doing TikTok all day. Which I still don't understand. But I digress.
That's because we're not teenage girls.
But tangential to your dying dreams, I don't think it's dead
What
yet.
the fuck is tangential?
It's near, around the same area.
English is my first language. I don't know that. Thank you for teaching me something.
What has been your favorite act?
Of mine?
Yeah.
I think that changes over the time. Right. I mean, I would say your newest act is always your best act in your head, but it's not always. I mean, sometimes then you get it on stage and it fucking sucks. Like, I finally got my pink act on stage last year, and I just, for whatever reason, I just can't work it out. But the costume's gorgeous because I spent all that time on the costume. But Rock and Roll Barbie, I would say, is, I think, a very strong act.
Give the people that may not have seen you live a short description of what Rock and Roll Barbie is.
It's a very glamorous act, but the dress is leather and laced all up the back, so you can like see my butt sticking out of it a little bit, and super tight fitted, custom made, and beautiful, fully encrusted gloves.
Very heavy gloves.
Very heavy.
Somebody can get killed if you throw that away.
Definitely. And someone would get killed if they didn't bring those gloves back as well. But so it's just very glamorous, and it has traditional bump and grind and traditional burlesque stuff in the beginning, but it's also super raunchy and raw. And it has a nod to Satan's Angel, who was a burlesque legend who unfortunately passed last year. And she was a friend of mine. So I've been wanting to include a little bit of her in something, and it was the perfect opportunity. It's to Get Down, Make Love by Queen, which is a song actually a lot of people aren't familiar with, and it just, audiences love it. Sure. So I think it's great. I think it has great energy, and I love performing it.
And how do you come up with all these ideas? What is your process of creating something that you will be proud of putting on stage?
I think depends. So for that particular act, like I had a different leather dress that I built an idea around that I wanted to create the visual of. And then I looked for a song that worked. And so I listened to a bunch of music, which I actually hate. It's not that I hate listening to music, but I hate listening to music when I'm looking for a song to use, especially if I have a concept already. That's even fucking worse. But then, everything starts from the dance with me. And so I'm sort of like thinking of costume pieces I have and how would I dance to that. And it just sort of like clicks an idea for a song, and then you sort of create everything else around that choreography and that idea. With Palm Tree, I knew I wanted to be a palm tree.
Got it.
I knew I wanted to have a backpack and the big piece on my head, and sort of how I wanted to strip out of it. And then someone else recommended the coconuts, which wasn't even, I don't think, originally part of it. I can't remember, but I wanted to have the samba stuff. And how did I make samba work where it wasn't appropriative? And had a storyline, right? So that added some layers and some props into it and things like that. So it just sort of depends. I mean, some things are very choreography based.
Right. So sometimes it's what you have laying around. Sometimes it's a vision or a picture in your head that you want the audience to see. And sometimes it's just what
or
dance
an
you wanna
era.
make. Oh, all right.
Like I want like a Gatsby era thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's no people formulate ideas in weird ways. Like some can picture it and then just trying to make the path towards it. Some people just start and see where it ends. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just ideas do something.
Yes, but burlesque costumes, you sort of, because they're layered, you kind of have to work from the bottom up. If you have the dress, you can build things that fit underneath it, but you can't just like grab a bunch of things. It just, because it has to function in a certain way. But I'm a hoarder, so I collect. I'm a glamour hoarder. It's not that I'm like hoarding old newspapers. So I usually have lots of things lying around that someday I'll plan to use for something.
Yeah, we're before we head to like at least my favorite part of the podcast, I was like asking my guests who or what is or are your inspirations.
That's always a tough question when people ask me that, because I don't have a burlesque inspiration. There's certainly people that I love that I think are amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be burlesque inspiration, but inspiration.
Right, but you mean into my burlesque, right?
Into your everything.
So I would say Janet Jackson was the biggest like dance situation, and Aaliyah. I loved Aaliyah.
Oh, man.
I know. I loved Aaliyah. So those were big. And then that's a performer that sort of had something that's added to my burlesque was Sid Charisse.
I have no idea who that is.
She was like an old time. She's like an old, I don't even know the era, like probably 50s actress. She was in movies with Fred Astaire and did these really elaborate dance sequences, and she was just phenomenal. Her body was phenomenal, but the costuming was a big part of it. So you'll see these scenes where she's like whipping around a giant piece of fabric and dancing with a bunch of men stepping over it, and she lots of times had like little burlesque reveals, not a whole thing, but little pieces of it. So I really love her. And then in burlesque legends, as I said, Satan's Angel. I have some of that. I certainly watched Dixie Evans and Jeannie Lee. You don't know who any of these people are.
Over my head.
Yeah. So there's, I've watched a lot of vintage burlesque stuff. I actually take it really seriously. I read books on it and I research it and spend a lot of my time knowing my history in addition to working on future things.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people forget now. That yes, it's imperative for an artist or for any creative to chart their own path, and sometimes they do that by like putting blinders. It's like, nope, I don't want to be accused of stealing ideas or being inspired of anything. I'm just gonna do my own thing. But you need to have some respect with history, just because you might be doing something has been done before, or there's
everyone's doing something. And to be honest, I'm guilty of what you're saying. Like, I didn't take classes in the beginning. Lots of people do now. Everyone's like, I came out of the New York School of Burlesque. I didn't. And I wanted to build my own thing, and I didn't want to borrow from other people, but I did go to shows all the time, like so many shows every week when I first began performing, and I kept up with performers' names and what they were doing all over the country and who was performing in what and what shows were happening in the world. And doing my research because that was so ingrained. Like when I came up, that was so important. Now you'll see performers who they want to be in a festival and they want to be Miss Exotic World, but they never read anything about the history of it. They don't know anything that's going on. And
Sirens are on our end.
and also the history of fashion and costumes, super important. I think a lot of people don't understand in burlesque that most of the time we make our own costumes or we design it and hire someone else to make it if we don't have the skill set. So that's like having to learn multiple other art forms because it's fabrication, it's engineering,
100%.
it's sewing, it's
commerce because you have to pay for it. Accounting.
Absolutely. And you have to know about photography because you have to have promotional photos. So then you have, and videography, and you have to know how to edit, and you have to know how to edit music. There's so many parts to it in it, and you have to know how to manage and negotiate contracts and like.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we want to teach people or tell people is that it's not that it can't be simple. But if you really want to elevate your passion, you need to broaden your horizon in all the other things that feed into making your passion the best it can be.
So that's why I say, like, you have to take care of yourself spiritually because if you're not in a good place, it's really hard to take off your clothes for people. If you're not feeling sexy, it sucks. If your relationship is falling apart and you have to go on stage, it's really hard to be like a sex vixen when you feel like shit. And that comes first and foremost because it's really easy to see those problems when someone gets on stage and you don't want an audience to have that experience. It's just like the worst feeling, and it's going to add to your feeling of a failure and all of those things. So you have to take care of yourself first. But then in addition to all those skills I just listed, you have to keep working on your dancing. You have to stretch and take care of your body, not only for aesthetic reasons, but so that it feels good enough to do the things you want to do.
You won't get injured when you're doing your act. So you don't get
injured and like all of those things. And then you want to go see drag because drag is huge now. So that's going to change our makeup and hair and costuming. You want to go see theater performances because that has some crossover. You want to see cabaret and like you just have to be so busy and well-rounded. You know, some people feel like because they work in nightlife, they have to be out all the time networking and meeting people that way. If you could have three of you, you still couldn't do everything you would need to do to make it like perfect.
Yeah. But again, it's like the idea is just do something. There's sometimes we have paralysis.
No, you can't stop.
Analysis.
If you want to be an artist, you
just have to do
sleep.
something.
Just say goodbye to sleep.
No, sleep is also part of taking care of yourself.
Sleep's super important. There's just not time for sleep.
That's true. But
or give up having friends and relationships.
Forget about health and just like just
no other hobbies.
Flame out. Speaking of flame and hotness, something that I like doing in the podcast is I do ask my guests to send their favorite photograph because again, this is still somewhat of a photography related podcast. That is my passion.
Oh, right.
I try to relate my passion with other people's
Your passion's naked ladies, so it's
and then I document it with a
case.
camera. So it's tangential.
Okay.
So I asked Lucy to send me her favorite photo, and then we're gonna discuss it. So I'm gonna flip the. I have.
It's hard to pick one. I have a lot of beautiful photos.
All right.
So this is just a favorite
Yeah.
photo.
Again.
And I didn't want to use one that you have taken of me because that felt like cheating. So I specifically was not going to use one of the beautiful pictures you've taken of me.
And it's great because.
But don't be offended.
I thank you for your explaining, but I don't get offended. But that's the idea too. Is every person's idea of a favorite photo or of a favorite image is different. I don't even say if it's of them, maybe taken by them, or just a general favorite photo. So.
Oh, you wanted like a selfie.
Whatever. Whatever. When I say what is your favorite image, what's your favorite photo, whatever you bring is something that innately in your brain, filtered or otherwise, risen through to the top, enough for it to be discussed with me or a different
Well, I
person.
have a different photo that would be interesting to discuss, but that's okay.
So I'm gonna flip the iPad around for the audio listeners, and Lucy's gonna describe the photo to you, and I'm gonna describe it myself, so that we can have a little bit more of like, this is how she sees it, and
Let
this
me
is
make
how
sure
I
I
see
sent
it.
you the right one. Okay. Yes, I did.
Okay. So tell me about said photo, and for the people that are watching on YouTube, it's gonna splash right about now. There you go. See?
Okay, so this photo is by Robert Feiner because I want to give photo credit to him. It was taken on a very narrow but tall yellow background in his apartment where he used his studio. And it, to me, is a very classic pinup everything. So that's why I love it. I'm very passionate actually about, I don't know photography like you do, but I think I'm pretty well versed specifically on pinup photography. As well as style. And certainly when I first got into burlesque, I did not know it as well as I do now. It's not actually a vintage dress. It's a reproduction. But by this time I had, I think, mastered my hair and makeup and nails and general style. So I think I hit that on the head. And the lighting, I think, is also correct for the time. I will say it doesn't have quite as much of the kind of shadow that some pinup photos do, because it's sort of like more spread out. But that's also because of my pose, I think.
And also, most of the pinup stuff were painted, so those shadows were manufactured.
Well, some of them. So they were painted, but they were painted based on oftentimes a live model or a photo, and they were stretched.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were stretched, which makes it like nearly impossible to get into those poses, which I don't think people realize. They like made everything more exaggerated. Your boobs were bigger, your waist was smaller, your butt was bigger, and your legs were definitely longer. And then they would take out the stool that she was sitting on.
So you're floating.
So you're like floating, and you're like this perfect ethereal being, which is nearly impossible to get a picture that is sort of true to that. So I feel like this is probably one of the best pinup photos I've ever taken.
Awesome.
So that's why I like it.
Yeah. And on my end, like, so Lucy...
It's really hard to relax your face on your back, just as a side note, as a model. Especially in my family, we have this like lovely vein that pops out sometimes.
In your forehead?
On our forehead. And so it's an interesting art as a model to be able to hit those poses and to look effortless.
On my end, so like what Lucy mentioned, she is on her back with her feet away.
My favorite position.
Yeah. Her feet away from camera, legs straight up, her looking back towards the camera and a yellow backdrop. Yeah, it is like a very traditional pinup look, pose, leopard dress, red hair, red lips. You can really see the pointy red nails too. So the thing is, people, at least on the photography end, it's very important to look at every inch of the photograph and see whether, does the stocking have a run? Does this nail is chipped, or is the teeth here yellower than the other? So it's actually good that at least this photo, when you look at it, it is very clean. Yellow background. I would have cleaned the floor a little bit more, but that's just, the photo itself. But it is a stellar photo by
Robert Feiner.
RZF.
Images. Yep.
Yeah, RZF. Robert Feiner will be tagged, so everybody can see this photo. I'll also link it in the description of both the audio podcast and on YouTube, so you can see what we've discussed. Aside from it being your favorite or one of the better pinup photos that you have taken, what made this shoot fun and memorable?
Oh. I'm not sure that it was particularly fun or memorable, to be honest.
Just like the output was good.
It wasn't not fun or memorable. It's not very memorable because I don't remember that much about it other than like sort of his home or whatever. I think I met him at my first mermaid parade. I met a lot of photographers and was very popular at that particular one. And then I think we set up the shoot after that. I also, my partner commissioned a drawing or painting, I'm not sure which it would be called, of this particular
Oh,
image
cool.
by Mally Siri. That's what I was looking at on my phone because I couldn't remember her name. A Canadian artist who I think now works for Playboy, and she's known for how she sketches hair. So I was just seeing if I could find that photo for you as well, but I can send it to you afterwards.
We'll use it
post
as one
if
of
you
the IG posts for this. So thank you for sharing your favorite photo.
Do you like it?
I
You
do
never
like
said
it.
if you liked it or
No,
not.
I do like it. I mean, that's the thing with I'm not great at pinup because one, I don't have fun colors. Now I do. I have a
You
coral.
don't have to have colors necessarily.
I know, but it is like, like what you mentioned. If you really do want the traditional pinup, I've also studied how difficult a pinup photo is. It involves a lot of editing because I don't know if people can imagine it on the audio listeners, but most pinup photos, like the renditions from the 40s, 50s paintings that were put on the airplanes, the modern ones will have that little inverse spotlight in the background to make the model pop. So if you have like a white background, there's probably a pink circle right behind the model. That's difficult to do. It's not something,
I don't know anything about lighting.
Yeah, but the thing is a little bit of lighting, a lot of Photoshop, but it takes a lot more effort editing to make it look natural enough because you don't want to make it look too cartoony or
Right.
plasticky, but you also don't you want to make it look slightly unrealistic because again it is still pin-up. You have the big hair, colorful lips, colorful stretched out pose. So it's difficult to do or to pull off, but it's something that I will be practicing on, particularly because I got an actual colored backdrop for me to install once I have tall people in the apartment. But yeah, I do like it. It's
And what you mentioned about everything being perfect, I think what's different when you're working as sort of an amateur model, and a lot of times trade for shoots, sometimes they Photoshop a lot, sometimes they Photoshop a little, and sometimes they don't Photoshop at all. So what my responsibility is doing my own hair, makeup, and styling is making sure every fucking thing is perfect ahead of time, which takes a lot of
it's difficult.
attention
I
to
mean
detail.
that's why for me, like my
I've
shoots.
seen your circles, before and after.
Yeah, but I'll
which
also
is interesting.
I that's why I tend to do more of the natural kind of thing. You like come as you are because it's a lot easier.
Which I will never let you
100%. Which is a lot more. It's because it's a lot more forgiving for people to. Because once you start making up and doing hair, you can't half-ass it,
Right.
right?
So for our listeners, Janelle's like, come, I want to see like your soul in the picture. And I was like, I don't want anybody to see my fucking soul.
I ain't got no soul.
It's not that I don't have a soul. It's just not what people want to see in a picture of me. It's not, it's like it should come through in a different way.
That's true.
To me.
I mean, but again, it's some people like when I started shooting burlesque performers, I think the reason why I took off initially is because I took photos of burlesque performers not in a costumey way.
Sure.
Like, I took actual headshots and portraits, which was funny because there were a couple of I think seasoned New York burlesque performers. When I asked if I could do a portrait, it's like nobody has ever done a headshot of me. It's like, why not? But y'all so pretty. It's like, no, because like you bring a costume, you shoot the costume. It's like you could take the costume off and you can shoot your head. So
I do think that's what's interesting about your photography sometimes. I also think you've done some interesting lighting things.
it's all of necessity. Again, working within your means. I have plenty of lights. People might get surprised how little gear I use when I shoot, but it's not because
It's because you're lazy.
yes, 100%. But also, the more stuff that you arrange, the more stuff that you have to manage. Again, you don't half-ass stuff.
Right.
If I just put up one light, I'm gonna make that one light stellar, because if I have to put two lights up, I have two lights to make stellar.
Right.
So it's exponential, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. But yeah, I have plenty of lights and plenty of gear. I just choose not to use
You're
it.
a gearhead. That's like your thing.
It's my toys, but
That's your hoard.
yeah, that is my hoard. But the other thing that I wanted to say is like, again, thank you for the photo that you sent. I haven't done this in the past couple of episodes, but usually when I ask my guests to send me their photos, I also pick my favorite photo of them that I can find through their
Off
social
my
media.
old ass website?
Not in your old ass website, but in your profile photos in your page.
Okay.
So I look at IG, I look at websites, but for the most part, the favorite place where I try to source images of my guests is the older profile photos that they have on Facebook, because you opted to put that there.
That's
the
true.
thing.
I will say my entire Facebook got hacked in maybe 2012. So my really old ones got
Aren't there?
deleted, and I did add them back in a different folder probably. But so I don't have the history most people have.
Yeah, I did go all the way back to the brunette with the blue streak, or was that violet?
Blue streak.
No,
No, that was just black.
just black.
But that's how the lighting looked.
Yeah.
When I first started burlesque, I actually had short blonde, like platinum blonde hair.
Oh.
And then it was like a deep, weird red violet-y thing. And then brown, and then black, and then red again.
God.
And then brown again, and then red.
So what I decided to pick as my favorite photo is this photo. The YouTube viewers can see it now. For the audio listeners, you can click on the description so you can join in the discussion. I'm gonna turn the iPad around and I'm gonna have Lucy explain the photo to me.
Oh, that's not that old.
Yeah, it's not.
So that photo is by Eli K. I met Eli when I had Pink and a Smile at Lucky 13 Saloon. And he also, I met probably at that same mermaid parade, and he was trying to shoot me for years, and I kept putting him off, and I hope he doesn't kill me, but I did tell him the story, so he knows it already. I looked at his photos and they didn't look very professional and very good, and I didn't want to shoot with him. But then he was coming to the show all the time, and he took great live photos, which is actually an art in and of itself.
I don't do it.
Very hard to do.
Very hard to do it.
Very hard to do well and get pictures that people actually like. And he did a great job of that, and we became friends. We went hiking and whatever. So we decided to do a shoot together. We've only done one, and I got a lot of photos that I loved out of it. And it was right before Valentine's Day. And I always pack way too many looks for any shoot, as you know. And I like to shoot a ton of photos of every look because I am a perfectionist. So with the slightest little thing will bother me. Yeah. And so right before the photo shoot, actually, I think I got off the train and he was picking me up from the train. I ran into a Dwayne Reed and got a heart-shaped box of chocolates so that I could use the heart as a prop in the photo shoot. And the chocolates were terrible, FYI. And it was like fabric-y, and I paid too much money for these shitty chocolates. And so I did a bunch of different poses with it. And then I've edited some of them to say funny things like fuck me and I'll pass and pay me. And this particular one, my legs are spread eagle with my heels kind of flexed and being playful and flirty, not slutty, even though my legs are spread, and it says "eat me."
Yeah, and that's the only
right in front of my crotch.
Yeah, the only reason I don't have the high res photo of it, so can't go
I can send it to you.
too much into the details. But the reason why I picked it is it's a good combination of everything that I know of Lucy. It's a little fun, a little bit over the top, forward. Open, right? And and again, I'm a big fan of clean backgrounds because that's what I usually do.
Super bright.
Bright background. So pink. Is this technically called a negligee?
Okay, so technically that's a vintage. I don't even know how you pronounce it. Peignoir.
I'm gonna leave that into
Peignoir. I only ever write it when I'm searching eBay for them.
Peignoir. Peignoir.
So it's like a nightgown and a little robe that covers it, and they were popular in the 60s, and this one's bright pink nylon.
Yeah, I think it's everything.
Very hard to actually model as well because they're like big.
You're covering most, or like you're sitting down, so it's kind of like hidden a little bit. But that's.
But there's a few. There's like a series from this particular photo shoot.
Yeah, and I went through this series and I figured this is fun. Fun, sexy, slightly mean. It's kind of Lucy, and it's great. And it's also the reason why I picked it too, because I know this firsthand. Lucy's complexion is very white. It absorbs light weirdly.
I'm super pale.
Yeah,
I
so
avoid the sun and have for 10 years.
it's hard to sometimes there are certain skin complexions. Like there are some very pale skin people that absorbs light fairly well, but when I shot with Lucy, it's really hard because it's hard to balance. At least for me, so I'm
I
still
look like
working
a
on it out.
corpse. And
So-
plus, my hair color is nowhere near the color that it is naturally. So I have like super bright red hair that I want to look bright orange.
And if you balance it out, it's just tough.
And my eyes are dark. I know it's a difficult thing to photograph.
but-
I will say that series of photos has gotten me a ton of work. People loved it, and it was a last minute fun idea that I had.
Yeah.
And that's, one of the great things about it. It wasn't like a long thought out situation.
Exactly. So I mean, that's just two different wavelengths of photos that we have discussed and share about Lucy's preferences. So both of them were just like randos in the mermaid parade that probably just walked up to say, "Hey, let's shoot." One,
Thirst buckets.
yeah, one was like, "Sure, let's go," and the other one took a while. So
Yeah.
that's a story in
I
itself.
don't like shooting.
Yeah. Well, again,
It's a lot of work for me. I have to living in New York City, I have to pull things from all over my house to make the looks and carry 100-pound bag or 2 bags to shoots, and the hair and the makeup and the prep I have to do for my body, my nails, it's just a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
my body hurts afterwards. Like,
there are a lot of people that enjoy shooting, but again, to shoot properly, it's not. Again,
not
anything
fun.
Yeah, it's anything worth doing is can't be 100% fun.
some
Yeah.
people, but I know some performers love it. Like, you've had Puss. Puss loves shooting.
Oh yeah, she's great. But also she also it takes a while to schedule certain things because lugging around a suitcase of clothes, scheduling when you're
Only
going.
thing you're doing that day.
Yeah.
I have to have my roots done. I have to have my nails
Yeah.
done. Like, it's just a lot.
I mean, just a regular
What
person.
if I'm having a bloated day?
Exactly. No, I mean, like even just a regular person, even myself. If I were to schedule dates, I need to schedule it like maybe a day or two after I wash my hair. The day that I wash my hair, because that's when my hair is best.
Right.
So I mean, simple things like those annoy me, and then that's why I'm never gonna be a model. So because
The amount of work I have
No.
to do to get on stage or do a photo shoot is really a lot.
no, but then yeah. So those are two very amazing photos. So shout out to Eli K and Robert
Finer.
Finer, RZF photos for
I think it's images.
images for we're gonna link you. Thank you very much for those photos. They're great. We're very happy to share them and blast you out in the social medias where we are heading towards there right now. Again, end of the podcast. Lucy, thank you very much. I know we don't do this semi-serious things a lot, but
Was this serious? Shit.
it's a
Sorry.
little bit. I mean, we're not talking about dicks and buttholes yet.
We could.
That's going to be on our other
Want
podcast.
different pictures?
But before we end, just tell the
Actually,
people.
that'd be a fascinating
What,
episode
buttholes?
for you to do of how to do a dick pic.
I weirdly, I
You
actually.
gotta light it. You gotta get the angle right.
Wh-
Like, getting a nice butt picture, a butt selfie is impossible. I nearly break my spine every time.
So, tip number one when you're doing, when you're sending dick pics or nudies,
Don't.
aside from don't,
I've never, even when I liked the dick, I don't need a dick.
if you're asked, right? Some people like dick pics.
No, but my boyfriend many years ago would just send them to me and I liked his penis,
Yeah,
but I didn't need the.
Some people like visuals. Like I would love to send nudies of my partners if they wanted to send me their nudies. But aside from that,
Would you like to send them of yourself?
no.
You'd like theirs.
Yeah, I
Right.
am very conscious about my body. I'm okay with my body right now.
I've actually never sent anybody a nude picture.
Yeah, it's fun. Like I have a lot of clients that are if their partner or boyfriend, husband is stationed elsewhere, they'll schedule a shoot with me. A lot of my clients before were actually right after they break up with their boyfriend.
Sure.
Yeah, so I was like, yep, I know. And my joke has always been, a lot of people shoot naked with me because they know that they can take me. They will always feel safe with me because they know that they can literally break me in half if ever I come across any line.
Sure.
But regardless of that, my first tip is selfies of your privates will never look great. Right? So either do a timer thing,
Okay.
right? A tripod, or have a very, very trusted friend to shoot you in angles where you can't reach yourself properly, nicely, which is weird. Good topic because I think it was a couple of weeks ago, right? I did get an inquiry about a guy who has multiple genital piercings that would like a professional photo shoot of that.
Okay.
And I'm totally in. So like, I gave him my rate. He's very excited to do it. I'm very excited to do it. Maybe might be a good guest on our other podcast where I'm gonna pass along the mic again to you. So again, before we end, thank you for all your time and your energy. Tell the people where they can find you, where they can follow you, and what they can do to support you.
All right. Well, I am about to launch my new website at lucybuttons.com. So check it out. There's going to be some videos, lots of pictures of various styles from a multitude of photographers. I have a couple of regular shows every Saturday, Buttons Burlesque Brunch at Toro Loco, which is in the financial district, and Dromedary every third Wednesday in Bushwick. Both of those are actually free shows, but for the brunch, you definitely want to have a reservation because it's usually a wait of a few weeks in order to get a table. And then I'm a regular at Les Scandal Cabaret, which is New York's longest running burlesque variety and cabaret show. You can get tickets online for that. And then, if you want to see where else, follow me on Facebook or Instagram, which is at Miss Lucy Buttons, Twitter at Miss Lucy Buttons if you want snarky quotes of the day. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, I cannot stress.
And they can Venmo me if they really want
100%.
to support me.
We're gonna put your.
But coming to shows really is the best because I want to entertain people.
Yeah.
So Venmo me if I do something for you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Like my pictures or.
We
bring me
understand
joy.
that it's hard to have, or people might not have cash during live shows. Highly encourage Venmoing the performers
totally.
tips. It's kosher now. It's part of the lexicon of tipping. Just say that, what's your handle, and then we'll send you some money.
But if you can't do that, what's also really important is to bring someone else. Bring a friend so that you're always exposing new people to the art form that don't know about it and expanding our base. And I will say I do a lot of sort of comedic writing on Facebook. So there's different arenas depending on what you enjoy from me. So it's either our podcast, Parade of Dicks, if you like listening to me, or maybe you like reading it on Facebook, or if you just want to know about the shows, then follow the fan page.
I cannot stress enough how fun I Love Burlesque is. Dromedary.
I didn't even mention it.
Yeah.
That's the production company.
The Dromedary Burlesque in Bushwick every third Wednesday. It's themed.
Usually but not
themed.
always.
But usually they will have some theme that will, either blow your mind or make you think. Either way, it's going to elicit some response, which is great.
It's fun. Whatever it is, it's always fun.
Great spot. Great tiki cocktails. Great people. Hey, I live fucking far away from Bushwick, and I trek there every fucking month. So it's a good kind of, if you're trying to impress your date, or if you and your friends are just trying to do something new, go there. And Toro Loco too is a great
totally different vibe. Toro Loco feels like a nightclub. If you're up for day drinking at 3 p.m., that's where you are.
And it's in the financial district of Wall Street.
Stone Street.
Yeah, so it's like that's around Wall Street. Mexican food.
Yep.
It's great. Always amazing stable of performers. A lot of them I have a lot of giant crushes on a lot of her regulars, so enjoy those. And again, we also have the other podcast, Parade of Dicks. It's a hoot. It's a hoot.
It's really stupid, but in like the best way, I think.
Yeah.
And it's intelligent conversation about stupid things.
It is one of those, like, I think one of the reviewers that we had in the podcast say, like, it's just like talking with my friends, just a lot more lewder. A lot more lewd. So yeah, that was a fun kind of like response to the podcast. And if you ever want to know what sort of content we have there, so we have everything from an AIDS advocate, AIDS survivor, talking about our experiences and how to support the people in that community. We also have uh, a friend bring her sex tape for us to review. So anywhere in between that spectrum, I think there's something for you. So
And it's a lot of talking about dating and sex, and if you have questions, you can send them in. I mean, there's a lot of different things depending on
100%.
what you're into,
We
and different political points of view from our guests. Yeah, interesting people.
And feel free to interact with us there because we are always looking forward to making content to draw more people in, but also just engage with the community at large.
And I don't let John L. use all of his sound effects
100%.
anymore.
I don't do.
So you don't have to put up with those.
Oh, kidding. But thank you, Lucy, and also thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, our dear listeners, for joining us in this episode. Again, this is the Fun Shoot Podcast. This is an irregularly scheduled podcast. I will try to just pump out as much content as I can now because it's actually becoming more important to be able to connect and share a voice with your friends to your other friends. We can be reached at funshootpodcast@gmail.com. If you have comments and questions, we'll try to get to that in the next episode or an appropriate episode that is coming up. Visit the podcast website at jongclemente.com/funshoot. You can follow the pod Twitter and Instagram feeds at Funshoot Podcasts. And if you want to leave a voicemail and you want to participate, you can leave it at 347-934-9594 if it's appropriate, but put it on air. If it's not appropriate, I'm just going to listen to it by myself in my bedroom. So again, thank you very much.
Gross.
Lucy, thank you. Whiskey, thank you. Listener, bye.